Welcome to the Indie Musician Summit 2021 with your host, Kate Westwood, brought to you by Westwood Management.
Well, welcome back to the Indie Musician Summit. Kate here again. I've got another fabulous speaker. Now, Elise is back. She was with us last year. She's from DAWter. And Elise, so glad to have you again with us for the summit.
Thank you so much, Kate. As I mentioned before, I am so excited to be back as part of this summit. I think considering the times that we're in at the moment, the events like this that we can participate in online are more important than ever. So really glad to be part of it.
Yay, me too. The reason I wanted you back again was because, one, I just really want to be able to highlight women in the industry and people who are creating something new, who have found a point of pain or an issue and decided, hey, I want to be the answer to that. And I've seen what you've been doing with your business, with your songwriting, with connecting with artists. So I'm not going to talk about that. I'm going to let you do that. Tell us about yourself, a little bit about who you are, what you do, and also how you got to be here.
Sure. My name's Elise Cabret. I'm first and foremost a singer-songwriter. That's where I started in music. Always have been very passionate about the songwriting side of music. I'm also a music producer, so I record all my own music, which is really, really fun. That's probably the biggest joy that I get out of creating music. And as you mentioned, I also have a music business called DAWter, where I coach songwriting as a way of supporting mental health. So throughout my life, I've had plenty of mental health struggles, as most of us have, and have found songwriting to be a really significant lifeline at times in helping me process what's going on in my head and also express these thoughts and feelings that I've been going through, particularly as a teenager, but definitely still now as an adult. Songwriting has played a really significant role. So as someone that's struggled with I'm a massive perfectionist and have quite high standards and have a lot of self-doubt and things like that. And I felt that that is something that doesn't get addressed when we're doing songwriting courses or any kind of creative courses. It's all about technique and all those sorts of things, whereas it's not actually addressing the creative soul. Like, creativity comes from in here, and I felt that I needed a lot of nurturing and to be able to build up my own confidence, and that was really what was holding me back in my songwriting. So as a songwriter, learning to work on myself and my own confidence has been helped me with my music and with myself and my mental health. So that kind of all links in for me, and that kind of gave me the idea that I really wanted to help other people write their own music and feel all the benefits that songwriting brings.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
wow, I love that whole thing of being a perfectionist. How many of us? I wouldn't say I'm a perfectionist, but I'm a details person. But the challenge of when is something done?
Yes.
When do we share it?
Yep.
It's a real big challenge. Hey, I want to go back to what you said about songwriting. I mean, you're primarily a singer-songwriter. Do you remember the first song that you ever wrote? Tell me about that.
Yes. No, so the first song I ever wrote was a song called Mothy. And it was a silly song basically about a girl that fell in love with a moth. And it was kind of poking fun at cliche love songs. And I wrote it as just to be a bit silly. And I do that sometimes, just write these silly songs and have fun with it. But that song ended up it kind of went viral within my school at the time. So I wrote it at high school, and there was a point where pretty much everyone at the school knew this song. And every time we'd have a music night or a performance night, I'd end up getting told to come on stage and perform Mothy. And all the students knew it word for word. So I got to live my little rock star dream in like year 11 and 12, which was really fun. But that was where it all started, I guess.
Start there. And you know what? Everybody has to write a first song. And would you agree, or tell me what you think about whether songwriting is a something that we're born with, or it's something that we have to learn and develop, or is it a bit of both?
A bit of both. I think that you need to love it and want to do it. That's really all that matters. Because like anything, it takes a lot of practice, and you need to have that passion there, I guess, that will keep you coming back to it and practicing. And a lot of people say that you can't be taught how to write songs, whereas I think, well, we have art classes, you can have guitar lessons, why can't we have songwriting lessons? And you absolutely can. There's plenty of techniques that you can learn from other people that have written hundreds of songs before, so we can always learn and get better at our songwriting.
Yeah. Okay, cool. No, I would agree. I think I use the example of it's a muscle that we develop, and we, the more we build that muscle, the easier it is to pick up a song, a guitar, and write a hit song in 10 minutes. But that usually comes from hundreds of hours of working out and hundreds of other songs that don't go anywhere. Chris Martin says that in the Head Full of Dreams documentary. I don't know if you've seen that, but he talks about, only 1 out of 10 songs that I write and I bring to the band actually go anywhere. And I was like, if Chris Martin has to chuck out 90% of his songs, then there's hope for us.
Absolutely. And that's a really good point. A lot of what we see is just that tip of the iceberg, finished, polished product. You don't actually see did you say 90% of the catalogue that never gets released? And even those songs that do get released, but in their early form, so those draft forms. And I think that's something that held me back when I was learning to write songs, is I was comparing myself to these artists that have had, they've got a team of people working with them, and world-class producers to help them, and you're just hearing the cream of their work which actually makes it to a record. And here's me, never written a song before, trying to sound like that and wondering why I'm, feeling not good enough. So it's a really important point you make, to keep that in perspective.
Mm-hmm. Let's go on that a little bit around comparison and around this whole, often we feel intimidated by people who are really great, or we feel insecure around people who know what they're doing, those kind of things. Talk to me a little bit about whether you think comparison is something that happens a lot, and if you have any tips or ideas about how you deal with comparison in your life right now.
I think, it's something that I think most of us do. It's in our nature as humans to try and find patterns in things, and we often are comparing ourselves to these standards. But I think really all we can do is try and be aware of the bigger picture, which is what we just mentioned then, is that those comparisons mightn't actually be fair or realistic, and to keep in mind that there's a lot that's going on behind the scenes that you mightn't be aware of. It's really important to also recognize that we're all on our own journey. No artist is the same, and what works for you mightn't work for other people, and vice versa. And I think the best, it sounds really cheesy, but it's so true, the best real comparison that we can make is to ourselves yesterday. So as long as we're yes, right?
Oh, love that. Ding, 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 ding. I love that. That's cool.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, as long as we're improving on ourselves and our own skills, then we're heading the right direction and doing the best we can.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I heard this, but I've kind of taken on for myself that comparison to find value is negative, but comparison to get perspective is really helpful. So if I'm looking to try and figure out how valuable I am, I'm looking at her, oh, she's better than me, oh, she's prettier than me, or she's better than that. So I'm looking for it to find where I sit in the value scale, that's actually not great for us. But to look at you and go, well, oh, look at her, she doesn't have a guitar and I have 4 guitars. Oh my gosh, I'm doing really well. Or, my life is hard, but if I look at people who are living in, say, we talk, Afghanistan's a big thing at the moment, like actually I'm incredibly wealthy and I have so much. And so that kind of comparison to help get perspective is actually really helpful for us, because it reminds us of what we do have, rather than sitting around that sense of like trying to find my value by comparing myself to someone else.
Yeah, I love that. That's a really good distinction. I'm going to use that.
It's been really helpful for me to go, okay, where is it okay to compare? And I think it's in that thing of help me give perspective. Compared to that person, I've got so much. Compared to that person, I'm actually really lucky that I've had this thing in my life or whatever. So yeah, take that one. That one's for free.
Yeah, I like it too. And I think we can use comparison as well as like to build our own blueprints for goal setting and things like that. We can look at how other artists I like to look at artists that are maybe a couple of steps ahead of me rather than someone that's on a massive label and playing massive stadium shows. But if I'm looking at someone who's perhaps playing, a bigger venue that I'd like to play at, then I can have a look at what steps they've taken to get to that point. And that can be a really useful comparison just to give me some, those stepping stones, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And allowing those moments of comparison to rather than turn to doubt, but to turn to inspiration.
Yeah.
To go, okay, man, they write really great songs. Okay, how did they do that? Oh, I'm inspired by that, rather than feeling down on myself because I don't write as well as them. Okay, well, I love what you said. How do they learn how to do that? What steps did they take? Who did they talk to get that opportunity? And so allowing ourselves to be inspired in that comparison rather than to doubt ourselves. I think such a big stumbling block for so many artists, because our art is so much usually early on, it's so much about expressing this deep thing within us. And so if we, we're our worth is so connected to our art.
Yes, that. Yeah. And I think especially as you say early on, when you may have only written a couple of songs, those songs are representing you. Whereas if you've been at it for a few years, you realize that we actually write hundreds of songs, and it doesn't matter if you write bad ones because they aren't actually reflecting who you are as a person or your skills as an artist. It's just, so trying to take the pressure off, I guess, when we're writing, to be like, this is just one of many. This isn't the song that's going to define my career. This is just one of hundreds of songs that I'm going to write.
I love that. Can you go into that a little bit more? How do we move into that process from being someone who is, these are the only songs I've ever written, and if someone doesn't like it, it means they don't like me, or they don't think that I'm good, or because we're so connected to that. How do you get to that point, like internally? And it's okay if you're not there yet, but what do you think about getting to that point of being able to, I guess, treat it more like a job than a passion project? And I don't know, where's the balance and the tension between both of those things?
Yeah, I think that's it's going to depend on person to person between what works for or what resonates for each person. But for me, I read a fantastic book by Stephen Pressfield called The War of Art. And he talked about treating if you want to take your art seriously and you want to do it as a career, you need to approach it like a job and in a professional sense. So that means showing up every day and doing your best, like for the time that you've committed to that project, and not taking it personally if it doesn't work out that day, because all we can do as artists is show up and do the work, but we don't always have control over whether we're inspired that day or whether something amazing happens. That will happen if you continue to show up. It's kind of inevitable, but it's unrealistic to expect that every time. And that doesn't mean that you're bad. That's just how this process works. There's another great book that I think is probably quite famous at the moment now, is Big Magic by Elizabeth Gilbert. And she sort of talks about that as well. She's quite an interesting person in the way she explains it, but she talks about it being like, she imagines that creative inspiration is almost like a separate entity to us, and we're just the worker or the channel that those ideas come to life. But we're actually not responsible for whether they're good or not. All we can do is just show up to do our work, and it's actually I think it's called a genius. The Greeks used to call it a genius. So it's like this little, almost like a house elf from Harry Potter. It's like this little magical creature that lives in the walls of artists' studios and whispers inspiration into the ears of artists at night. But it's actually the genius's fault if the work is no good. It's not yours. which is, it sounds kind of silly, but I think the important take home from that is to separate yourself, your sense of self-worth, from the art and the quality of that art. So if as long as you're showing up every day, that's enough, that you're doing your part. And yeah, I feel like if we are committed enough and we do show up every day, then it's inevitable that we're going to hit gold. But it's definitely unrealistic to expect that every time.
So good. I love that. I haven't read that one, so we'll pop that in the comments. Big Magic.
Yeah, it's brilliant. It's very such an entertaining read. She's a great author. So she wrote Eat, Pray, Love. I think she's most famous for. But yeah, Big Magic's become quite popular too. Cool. I highly recommend it.
Okay, for creative types.
Yes.
So I've given you a bunch of questions I thought we'd go through, but I'm just throwing a couple of extra ones at you.
Oh, that's all right.
I would love to talk to you a little bit about this whole thing of our art and our creativity becoming so commercialized. So, someone is a good singer. Oh, you should go on The Voice. Or someone likes to paint. Oh, you should sell that and do an Etsy store. That there seems to be this thing of, because we have this internet age where it's so accessible now to share what you're doing digitally with the world, to get someone to set up an e-store and all that kind of stuff. What have you seen or heard, and especially when we write all these hundreds of songs that may never get seen, how do we find a balance between writing for work and writing for ourselves and writing just for the love of it and creating just for the love of it, even if we never get famous or we never release those songs? I wanted to know if you had any thoughts around that sense of, staying true to the purpose of creativity is for creativity's sake and communication's sake, not necessarily for a career or for money or for marketing.
Yeah. Okay. I could talk all day about this. And I think, how do I want to tackle this? I think a really big problem starts to occur for artists when we start judging our work by the way it's received by other people. So how many likes it gets, how many streams it gets, how many people go to our gigs. And especially, as you say, in today's world with the internet, that has almost become a way of defining the quality of art by how many plays it gets. And if you know anything about business and marketing, it becomes really obvious that the quality of the work it's not sorry, my cat is meowing at me and distracting me. If you have a really good marketing team, you can make the worst song in history really, really famous. And I'm sure people watching can think of examples. I'm not going to go down that road, but we all know songs that are really bad that are on the radio and really famous and getting a lot of plays. And I'm sure as musicians, you've also heard some incredible songs, maybe by your fellow musicians that are absolutely beautiful, but just they're not getting anywhere. They're not being heard. So first of all, the amount of plays something gets is not in any way indicative of its quality. So just try, I know it's hard to get that out of your head, but try and remember that, because there's nothing more disheartening than putting all your work and your heart and soul into something, and then you put it out there into the world and it gets nowhere.
Or the only way we measure it, and it's the only thing we're thinking about, is how many streams, and we don't have ways to measure the impact in other ways, would you say?
To measure the impact in other ways,
comments, we're not writing down people's comments about what they think about the song. We're not writing about, how many people have played it in their car over and over again, like those kind of things that don't come through on a Spotify, for artists' website.
Absolutely. And if you think about these, I call them vanity metrics, because that's kind of what they are. It's like an ego trip to see, all of us, and myself included, we want to see those big numbers because it makes us feel validated. But it as you're right, it's not, it's missing out on a whole lot. So thinking about, if I've written a song and 20 people hear it and it absolutely inspires them, it makes them feel something and gives them strength, or whatever this song is, it's really affected 20 human beings. That's incredible value. But 20 plays on Spotify is seen as a failure. So I think if we can try and remember that each of those numbers is a human.
Yeah.
It's not just a number. That can be really important, in valuing even small numbers can be incredibly valuable.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I know, and also that kind of related is that I know in my own songwriting, so I, like most artists, started out wanting to get famous and make it in the music industry, and that was kind of my driving force behind it. And I was always trying to write to please people, and that ended up, it really affected my music, those songs, they were good, but they weren't me, because I was writing them and being totally concerned about how other people would receive them. Will other people like this? What are they going to think of this line? That's all I was thinking about when I was writing these songs. And then eventually, as I started working my business more than my music, and my music has become more of a creative outlet, though the songs that I write now are just for me and what I love, and I'm not writing them for anyone else yet. What's happened is those songs are now far more original, far more authentic, because they're coming from me without being affected by other people's opinions. And these songs that I'm writing now are doing better than any of the songs that I've written previously, just because they're more authentic, I guess. Yeah. So I think it's really important to try and think about, try and focus on what you are getting out of writing this, and communicating with that authenticity, and not, it's the oldest cliche in the book, but not worrying about what other people think, because that's where it wrecks it.
So good. I think one of the things that I come across with artists a lot is just people being frustrated by their expectations not being met, and being disappointed by the results not being what they had hoped. With songwriting, how do we continue to write and create, even though the likelihood of us achieving our, big Grammy-winning goals or 1 billion streams on Spotify is very small? How do we approach the art of songwriting in a music business in a way that it has, with good expectations? It's kind of a slightly muffled question, but how do you manage your expectations, I guess, in that space of when you are writing and you are releasing, but also, you're not Tones and I, and I'm not Celine Dion, and which is silly, to compare, but we haven't got that level of success or of notoriety.
Again, I think it's about recognizing the value in smaller numbers and nurturing your tribe. So if you've got a small following, focus on connecting with them as human beings, not as entities that are boosting your plays, as actual humans and supporters of your music, and really try and connect with them as much as possible, not only through your music, but through your social media. And you can actually be quite creative in the ways that you do that as well. And I might actually give you an example of that in a minute. But really, the more connection that you can create with your core tribe, those people, if they really love you and they feel recognized by you, they're going to be like walking business cards for you, and they're going to bring their friends to your shows when we can play shows again. But they're going to tell their friends to listen to your music, and that's how you'll grow organically. And there's I think a lot of power in that word of mouth, even though it sounds really old school and it's probably a bit slower than we'd like it to be. But and I think if we build such connection with our following, we as artists are going to get that back as well. We're going to feel it's going to mean more, because these people aren't just faceless numbers streaming our music. These are, you know, humans and faces that we see at our shows that reach out to us on social media and engage with our posts. And I think trying to focus on that is probably the best way that I know. So the example I was going to give you is, a project that I've been working on recently, which I've been having a lot of fun with, is this song I've written called I Am Enough. And it's this a goofy song about a superhero that fights for mental health, and their slogan is I am enough, or their catchphrase. So it's a really silly, fun song. And as a way of getting, I didn't even do this as a marketing strategy, but it worked quite well, or it is working at the moment, is that I had this idea that there's crowd participation in this song, because I imagined, you know, singing it live, and I wanted to get the audience to be like shouting out I am enough, you know, in the bridge part and whatever. I thought that'd be really fun, but I wanted to record a studio version of the song, so I needed other people's voices. So I put it out there on my social media to people in my mailing list and said, hey, I've written a song, I need some people to contribute their vocals. You don't have to be a great singer, you just have to sing this line, record it on your phone and send it to me. So then I didn't know what was going to happen, but I actually ended up getting this really, like, I'm modest but good response, because I didn't have these huge expectations. So I didn't walk into this going, I'm expecting 100 people to come at me. So already I was pleasantly surprised that I had people responding at all. But then I ended up getting responses from people all over the world. So I had people from London, America, Malaysia, all over the world, which made me feel awesome. And that gave me the idea to, well, what if I make a music video for this track and get people involved? And so I've been working on this campaign lately of getting, sorry, my phone's ringing, getting people involved in the music video and filming themselves dressing up as superheroes and dancing to this song. And I've had a really positive response to that. Again, not huge, I'm not talking thousands of people, but certainly enough people that it's made this song bigger than just me. And I know that when I go to release it, I've already got a bunch of people that are invested in it, they're all going to want to share it on their networks because they're in the music video or they're on the recording. And it's just created this narrative around what would have been just another song, but now it's become this whole collaborative project that's really positive. And so my point is that is from me just being authentic, it's actually organically become a marketing strategy for this song that's, you know, doing quite well. But I haven't expected it to be, you know, Taylor Swift levels of success. But I've nurtured a small community of people that are now really excited about the song and want to share it with their community. And that's enough. Like, I feel really awesome. Like I'm hearing my song played in some random town in the USA going, that's amazing, you know, that's really cool. So to not lose perspective of that and just celebrate those little wins. And
so great. I mean, and I've seen your emails come in, I've seen you doing it on socials, and I think it's the exactly what you said, taking the moment to treat each person as a person rather than just a number. And that's how we find satisfaction and value in that connection, not just in those vanity metrics. That's so wonderful. I would love to take what you said there around this songwriting for mental health. Now, there's a couple of things that you've been doing, but let's just talk about how you're helping to support songwriters. You've just started this, well, I reckon in the last couple of months, this great Facebook group that's really about supporting, connecting with songwriters. Tell me about why you started this, why it's different, and what the value is in this whole collaboration that you're doing.
Awesome. Yep. So that's another really good example of connection. And this has really become the core focus of what I want to do and how I want to promote my business, because I feel like that at the end of the day, it's about human beings connecting with each other. So I'm part of a few Facebook groups, the songwriting Facebook groups, and there's a lot of them, and I ended up being really frustrated because all of them look the same. There's just an endless feed of people posting their links to their songs, saying, listen to my new song, or give me feedback on my new song. And they're getting no engagement. No one's listening. And it is just an endless feed of literally thousands of people posting links to their songs and them not getting heard. And all that's doing is feeling like, I know how it feels when you put your song out there and no one cares, right? I know why that doesn't work now. I've learned about how that works. But at the time, like, I know, yeah, that feeling of when you're really proud of something and you can't wait to share it and you put it out there and you don't get anything back, that can be really disheartening as an artist, especially if it's maybe the first time you've ever shared one of your songs or something that you're really proud of. We need that. We need our confidence to be nurtured in those stages. So I had the idea to start my own Facebook group where I would, I don't allow anyone to share links to their music, but instead, once a month, I do a live stream where people can submit their music to the live stream. And I sit down often with a friend of mine, Dan, and we listen through each of those songs and we listen to them in their entirety with our full attention. And it's streaming live to the group, so a bunch of other people are listening and watching too. And then we have a little bit of a discussion about the song. I give you some feedback, particularly if people are asking for feedback. And you get to see people reacting to your song, right? That's really what it's about. And about making sure that those songs get heard, because I really believe that every song deserves to be heard. And just doing that, like having that little community has given me so much just joy and feeling like I'm actually doing something that's making a difference. And again, they're not huge numbers and they don't need to be, because I'm only one person. I've only got so much time to listen to so many songs. But every time I do one of those live streams, each month I get all of these beautiful messages from people saying, thank you so much. You've given me, I learned so much from you, or this has given me heaps of confidence, or, that's like music to my ears. Hearing, that's what I want. Like that, I want to nurture songwriters and nurture their confidence and creativity. And so that's really what it's all about. And it's going really well. I think we've run maybe 4. I think it's been going for 4 months. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So the group's growing all the time. The last live stream we did last week, actually all the slots went a week in advance. So it's, getting out there. People are organically, because I'm providing value and because I'm treating people like human beings, they are getting on board and it's growing.
And I love that, I'm a part of a couple of groups too, where it's just about sharing. And, it really bothers me when someone just says, hey, listen to my song. And you're like, why? Who are you?
Exactly. Yeah.
I don't care. And it doesn't mean that I don't care about people, but it really matters that when people care about something, then they're going to be invested. So the biggest thing is, well, how do I help that person care about me? How do I up that care factor with them and I, so that when I do release something or I do have something to share, they actually will take time because they care about it. And I love that you're doing that, and you're seeing an issue and you thought, I'm going to create something different that actually provides some value. Now, I have a quick question about that, just personally. Are those songs like finished, released, distributed songs, or are they songs that are in process and that
a bit of both? So I haven't put any limitations around that. I encourage people to share stuff that's not finished, because that way I can give people feedback and they can take that on board. So if people submit songs that are finished, they're on Spotify or whatever, it's more about just giving it a listen and giving them some support. But And I don't offer feedback on those usually because it's done, right? It's nothing worse than, you can't go back and change it now. So, but yeah, I do really encourage people to rough as guts, like just something you've recorded on your phone, or it does not have to be polished or pretty. They're my favorite ones that when I hear those. So yeah, we get a bit of a mixed bag.
I love that. We'll definitely pop the links to that group, and if people want to be a part of that in the month.
Awesome.
But how important to you, or how important do you think it is to get feedback on your songs as you're writing them? Exactly what you said. Not when it's done, because you can't give any helpful feedback. Nothing can change once it's done. But in that process, should we be doing that with every song we write? Should that be kind of part of our writing process to get feedback and thoughts about our music?
I find it really helpful. I think get feedback when you're ready to. When you're getting feedback, it's only someone else's opinion. So keeping in mind that feedback isn't necessarily true. There's no wrong or right way to write music. It's just someone else's opinion. So if you're ever asking for feedback, keep that in mind. And your vision as the artist is the one that matters at the end of the day. So if you don't agree with feedback that you get, then it's not the right feedback for you. So I always try and encourage people to keep that in mind. But if you're feeling at a place where you're ready to share a song, or maybe you're stuck with something, it's not quite sounding the way that you want it to and you don't know where to go, then getting feedback can be a really good way to get through those blocks. I found that really helpful. But yeah, it's really up to you. It's a personal decision. Yeah.
Okay, awesome. Well, I would agree. I'm big on feedback and collaboration and constructive feedback and ideas. Absolutely.
Getting feedback from someone that knows how to be constructive is important too.
I'll just say, I use the example of like a Jenga game. Jenga has all the blocks, and you take the block out and you have to put it up and make it tall. But I use the example of that feedback or criticism is like taking a block out, like, the melody of the chorus isn't good. Okay, so now the song's actually weaker because you've taken out this thing. But constructive feedback is actually saying, okay, the melody isn't great, but what you could do, if you wanted, you could, take the third line and go a third above. So I'm actually giving you an opportunity to construct something with my feedback. So yes, it's criticism, but it actually gives you a building block that you can choose to then put into the song to give it strength again. So I use kind of that as an example.
I love that. That's great.
And I really encourage in my community that feedback should always come with your thoughts about something, but then your suggestions about how to improve that. That's actually valuable. It's not helpful to someone, I like it or I don't like it, or that bit sucks, or that doesn't excite me that bit. Okay, well, what could I do then? What are your thoughts? Obviously, because we do get stuck, and that could be a challenge. I don't know how to make this better. And if someone says, yeah, you're right, it's not good.
Great.
But I love what you're doing there. It's offering the opportunity to cultivate this thing of learning to be okay with feedback. And even though it's not always easy to ask, I don't always find it easy, but I know that it's valuable. So I'm willing to push through that awkwardness, because I know that so many of my songs have actually been way better because I've taken a moment to grab that feedback and then go and play around to see what could work in the song myself. So I love that you're cultivating that in that group. And I definitely recommend Indie Musician Summit attendees to jump on board with that. Doesn't matter what country you're in, you can submit your songs. So that's really
we've got people from all over the world. It's really, really cool. Yeah. It's really fun during the live streams to, people are up at 6 a.m. watching. It's really
cool. My song, I've got to be there. That's so cool. I love that you're passionate about this whole thing of mental health, and I love that you're wanting to be the change in that space. So talk to me a little bit about the big project that you've been working on this year around an actual course that isn't just songwriting for songwriting's sake, but songwriting for mental health.
Yes. Yeah. So I've written and created this course. It's called The Song Prescription, Heal Yourself Through Songwriting. And it is really, it's a songwriting course, but it's from the perspective of learning to process your mental health and support your mental health through songwriting. So songwriting is such a fantastic outlet for creative expression. And so it's a 7-module course. It's in beta stage at the moment. So I've had a few rounds of beta testing already, and I'm getting some really encouraging feedback, which is awesome. But I'm still wanting to improve it and take on that feedback. that I'm getting to make it the best it can possibly be. So yeah, that's accessible right now through my website. I'm sure Kate will pop up the relevant links for that, and I'm offering a discount for you guys as well on that course if you're interested, which is always good. And if you're interested in learning more about songwriting and mental health, or maybe wanting to know about how you can work through some creative blocks that you're going through at the moment, I love talking to people about this, and I'd be really happy to have a chat with you as well. So if you're just wanting some advice or some feedback from me on your creative process, if you're getting really stuck, as I mentioned before, I'm really being such a perfectionist myself, that's been something that I've worked on for years and years. So I love helping people, particularly in that space, in the perfectionism, self-doubt, procrastination, all of those things. If you think that's affecting your songwriting, then there's definitely things you can do to work on that. And I'd be really happy to have a chat with you.
Love it. Well, I actually did one of the early beta tests.
You did?
I learned so much. I loved how you talked about the brain and how the brain works and how it all works together. So I definitely recommend jumping on board, especially if you're wanting to learn in that space. And mental health is such a big challenge. We've got lockdowns, we've got pandemics, we've got all these fears, we've got, people losing jobs and income, whole industries shut down for months, years at a time, things that may never recover. People actually who are full-time musicians thinking, well, I'm going to go work in real estate, or I'm going to have to find something, give up on my dream because I can't pay my bills and I can't take care of my family. So it can be such a big challenge on top of all the other things we've talked about, comparison and finding our worth and our value and telling a story and vanity metrics and all those things and the pressure that we find. Let's talk a little bit about about mental health, what you think is really challenging for artists at the moment, and what you're doing personally to take care of yourself, even if you don't do it all the time, some strategies that you have for actually, taking care, just like we would exercise and take care of our physical health, how you take care of your mental health.
So for me, the biggest one for me, and I'm sure you're all aware, is reaching out and talking to people and making sure that you've got support around you and people that know what's going on. And even it doesn't have to be at crisis point. This is just something that I do. I've got a couple of really close people that I have contact with very regularly, and they know what's going on in my life, and I know I can reach out to them at any point. So prioritizing those relationships, I think, is really important. I think that was at some of the worst times in my life became that bad because I wasn't reaching out. I wasn't I didn't feel like I had a right to talk to people or complain because, so many people have it worse off than me, and a lot of people feel that way. So now I've learnt how important that is to make sure you can reach out to people, and people want to be there for you because they care about you. And they almost, they're upset if you don't reach out because they're your friend or family, or they love you and that they want to be that person for you. So don't ever feel like you're a burden. People want to help, and as I'm sure you want to help your friends, and if they come to you, if they're feeling really upset and come to you for support, that it feels good to be that person. So yeah, I really recommend trying to reach out to people as much as possible. The other thing that I really like to do is journaling. I'm a writer. I love writing, whether that's writing lyrics or just writing in a journal. And this is a really good exercise that I do when I'm feeling a bit overwhelmed. Is I think this is from Elizabeth Gilbert as well, a big magic author. So I sit down with my journal and I say to my fear, I almost like personify my fear as a character or a person, and be like, okay, fear, now is your time to speak. I'm going to let you speak and have your say, and I'm not going to judge anything. And I write down what all of those fears are saying, and don't judge them. And it's amazing how much we judge our fear and we don't let it speak. But give your fear a chance to come out, and you might actually be surprised as to what is there. So give your fear a chance to speak. And once that fear is, you feel like that you've gotten everything out and had you say, thank your fear for being open with you and honest with you, and then invite your wisdom to speak. And that's the part of you that that's wise, that and you can get ask that part of you will address all of these fears with wisdom. And because your fear has had its chance to speak, it's not going to be in your ear. Like it's a good way to give these two parts of yourself space, the space that they need. And what you end up with is you're much more aware of what is going on in your own head. And usually if you let your wisdom address each of these fears, you can be a lot more realistic about it, and a lot more grounded and centered around those fears, and know what you need to do next. Which I find that exercise, it sounds a bit silly, but it has been so useful for me, especially when things are just feeling out of control. That would be my advice.
I love that. So you said, making sure we're talking and reaching out, and then taking a moment to journal and to address those things. I love those ideas so much.
Yeah.
And you know what? We're asking every speaker in the summit to talk on that, because I think it is one of the biggest battles is, even we talked at the beginning, comparison and insecurity and intimidation. Those things are a mental battle that stop us from moving forward, stop us from, we isolate and we cut ourselves off from opportunities because we think that they won't want us, or like the stuff that goes on in our head that no one else sees or hears is usually what tells us whether we're moving forward or whether we're staying hidden, all that stuff. So important to address it. And I love your encouragement there to get that stuff out, either in journaling or in talking to someone that's safe that you can process with. So so wonderful.
Our self-talk is the driving force behind a lot of our actions, so we need to take charge of it as much as we can.
Okay, well, we're going to wrap this up. I've absolutely loved this chat with you, Elise. Now we have talked about a couple of tips or tricks, but I just want to see if there's any strategies or thoughts that you have for people wanting to get started in songwriting, people who want to develop their songwriting. So of course they should join your songwriting group. They should also jump on songwriting prescription course as well. But what are some other thoughts that you might have around people just wanting to get started in songwriting? How do they do that?
So the best exercise, as I said, I'm a writer. So if you're into writing lyrics, I would encourage you to do as much, stream of consciousness writing as possible, which is basically writing without stopping and not editing yourself. And what that's doing is it's training you to get all of your thoughts and ideas and inspiration out there, without this, what I call the editor, the voice in the head that's telling you, no, this isn't good enough, or you should do that differently. We want to learn to ignore that, because that voice is going to prevent us from being our most creative. So I find stream of consciousness writing really helpful for training ourselves to ignore that editor and get out and become comfortable with getting things out that aren't perfect, right? It's all about rough ideas, and you're going to have stuff that's just really awful, and that's fine. We talked about, even Chris Martin writing 90% of his songs he doesn't use. So being comfortable with getting out that stuff that's not great, because within that you're going to find the gems, but you won't find anything if you don't get it all out there in the first place. So that'd be, stream of consciousness writing is a really good way to start. But if you're not really a lyrics person, and a lot of us aren't, the other, I guess, a more musical approach for that, which I love to do, is if I feel a moment of inspiration strike me, I've got a musical idea, we all have one of these in our pockets, hit voice recorder, and just capture as much of that idea as possible in its roughest form. And don't try and edit it. Don't try and perfect it. Just get that idea out there and think, well, what else could go with this idea? And just get as much raw material onto that recording as possible while you're feeling inspired. And then then once it's captured, then you can go back and edit it and pull it apart. But you want to get as many ideas out as possible while you're feeling really inspired. And often I will find, you know, when I'm singing nonsense into my phone, and when I go back and listen to it, I go, wow, that's such a beautiful line. Like, I would have never written that, but it's just come out of my subconscious while in that moment. So I think you can find a lot of gold if you're writing that way. Yeah, that's probably my best advice to get started.
I love that. I definitely have some 1 o'clock in the morning voice memos of me.
Yep.
On the side, I was dreaming this melody. I don't know if it exists or not, but I'm putting it down.
Oh, how bad is your voice at 3 a.m.? It's like a squeak.
I was like, can I even understand myself? Yeah. Well, I really just love the way that you are approaching all of this. I love your desire to really connect one-on-one with people, and what you're doing is you're asking for people to be involved. You know, you're asking for people to be involved in, you know, sharing their song or their video for your video clip. You're asking people to be involved in the songwriting process and that feedback process. You're inviting and including and building a community around what is so important to you. And I think that's so valuable, Elise. And one of the reasons why I really wanted to have you back on the summit this year is because you're doing something that isn't for the top 1%, but it's for the rest of us who are just trying to muddle our way through and trying to figure out this industry, trying to understand who we are, trying to identify all the different voices that we're hearing about, you know, who we are and, you know, how we should feel, how we should see the world, how, you know, how we should represent ourselves, all those things. So I love what you're doing, and we're so stoked to just hear some great wisdom and gems in there. So
thank you.
Part of the summit. Any one more that you have to share with everyone?
I could talk all day, honestly, about this sort of stuff. I've got some notes here. I'll see if there's anything okay. So yeah, finishing songs, right? So that was the number one challenge I've been, that songwriters experience. I've done quite a few surveys on this, and time again, people answer finishing songs is the hardest thing. And just a really cool way to think about that, which I use now, is I think about a song as like a boss in a computer game, right? So we're playing a computer game and we're at this boss, and sometimes we fight the boss and we defeat them and we get to the next level. Cool, that's always really good. But sometimes that boss is really hard to beat and you get really frustrated and you try and you can't do it, and then you crack it and throw your keyboard and go do something else for a while, and then you want to finish the game. So, you know, tomorrow you come back and you try again to beat this boss, and you have to beat them before you can get to the next level. But that's the point, is that you have to beat them. There's no way of getting around it. So instead of giving up on your songs too early because it's too hard or too frustrating or you can't, treat it like a boss in a computer game. You've got to beat this. You've got to finish it. And I don't care how good it is. It doesn't have to be a number one hit. You've just got to get it finished. Because if you do finish a song, you're going to get so much value out of that you would miss out on otherwise. A lot of us practice starting songs, but we never practice finishing them. So that's a lot of the time where we need the practice, right? So instead of taking it too seriously, think about it as a boss in a computer game that you've just got to defeat them. It doesn't matter how you do it. It doesn't have to be amazing. Just get it done. Yeah. And then you can level up in your songwriting. Yeah.
Absolutely. So good. I'm glad I asked one more. You think about Bowser from Mario Brothers.
Yeah.
And he has the big shell and everything. Anyway.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's just good to not take it too seriously, right? It's, you know, it's not defining you as an artist. It's just a stupid,
And especially if you're wanting to be a professional songwriter, you want to be known as a songwriter, you have to finish your songs. You've got to be able to, in one day, write 2 or 3 songs and actually complete them and finish them. You can't labor over them for months and months and months.
No. I remember when I went to uni, I did a songwriting course at uni, and the scariest moment, I remember the lecturer coming in and telling us for this class, we had to bring a new song in every week. And I think I'd only written maybe 6 songs ever. And I was so scared. I ended up crying in class. I was so scared, like just the stress of that. I can't do that. That's impossible. but it ended up being the best thing that ever happened to my songwriting, is just having to pump one out every week and getting practice at that and getting used to that and getting comfortable with that. And some weeks they were pretty bad, but actually most of the time they ended up being really good, or much better than I thought they were.
Sure.
So yeah, finish your songs.
And really at this point when we're getting started, it's quantity over quality, and we will find the gems in there, but the more we write, the more we level up our songwriting, the more we build our muscle. I totally agree. So wonderful. Well, Elise, we're definitely going to pop all the links for people to join your songwriting group, and also to grab that wonderful discount to your songwriting prescription course. Looking forward to connecting and sharing and hearing more from you over the next couple of months. Thank you so much for being part of the summit.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been really fun.